The new Gen 4 car is out, and while a lot of it feels the same to what we already know, there are some interesting quirks and differences in it that need some specific techniques to drive well. So over the past few weeks, I've been trying out the new Gen 4 car on different types of tracks and consulting people a lot better than I am to come up with a pretty good list of tips to help you succeed in the new Gen 4 car. But first, today's video is brought to you by Kufandy. You may know Kufandy as a premium menswear brand, or you may know them as the sponsor of Christopher Bell's number 20 car for Martinsville of this year. You might have seen Kufandy make the rounds on NASCAR Reddit lately by having Christopher Bell play dress up in some of their outfits, but honestly, I think it's just really cool how they engage with the sport and their driver like this. They also recently revealed the number 20 Kufandy paint scheme, and it looks really cool. I've never seen this color combination on a car before, so it's cool to see how it's going to look on track. Probably pretty bright. And today's Kufandy fit of the day is this hoodie t-shirt combo. Really comfy to work out in. Loved running in it. You could see here I was going to try to shill Kufandy, but I was literally about to die and out of breath. But thanks to this hoodie tee, I shaved 10 seconds off my mile time, so that sounds good to me. On top of that, Kufandy is having a Prime Day event from July 10th through the 15th at kufandy.com. Use code DJYJ25 for 25% off your entire order. Thank you to Kufandy, and back to the video. The first and probably biggest difference between this new Gen 4 car and the old Gen 4 car is the asymmetrical suspension, which is actually brand new for any oval cars or any car that I know of in iRacing. Maybe some dirt cars already have that, but friend of the channel Liam Brotherton found out through some people at iRacing that in achieving a setup that is very similar to what the old Gen 4 car would be in real life, they approached the setup of this new Gen 4 car in iRacing with that asymmetrical suspension setup. Now, it's very complicated and beyond my understanding, but you can kind of visualize it with soft springs on one side and hard springs on another. Not exactly, I know they already do that in other iRacing setups, but this idea for the Gen 4 car makes it so that it in particular loves to handle in the corners, but doesn't really love to go straight on the straightaways. Many people already found out at Charlotte that the car really didn't like to stay in one lane as it was going down, especially on old tires. But the trade-off is that the car handles extremely well once it gets loaded correctly into the corner. So to show you an example of what I'm talking about, I'll go out on the track on Charlotte and kind of give some pointers. Okay, so I'm at Charlotte and I want to demonstrate a couple techniques here that are very helpful for the Gen 4 specifically. The first is what I like to call quiet hands. One movement to the left, one movement to the right. The movement to the left should happen with the flow of the car, and the movement to the right should be the force feedback kind of bringing you back to center. So I'll show it again here. Very smooth turning in, quiet hands, very little micro adjustments in the center of the corner, and then just let that force feedback take you back. And if you do that, you really don't have to think about your pedals all too much. Like there, I was just talking about my hands, and honestly, it might be muscle memory, but I'm just kind of able to go full throttle and then let the wheel take me back to the center. And you don't get any wheel spin. You don't have to worry about the smoothness of the pedals too much. Like obviously you don't want to stomp. So like look what happens. I'll do quiet hands here, then I stomp. Well, actually, I'll be honest, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but it did get me a little tight. So I was kind of expecting it to spin me out, but it didn't. The other thing too is that look at what happens when I get into the corner here, and let's see what happens. I'm sawing the wheel too much. Look how tight I get the moment I start sawing the wheel, even when I'm off throttle. So every time you're sawing on the wheel, in this car especially, you're just taking away from the natural turn the car wants to have in the corner. This car loves to turn. It loves to turn on the straightaways, and it loves to turn on the corners as well. And that's kind of the point of it. So you just want to be as on high alert on the straightaways, and then once you make your corner entry, you just let the car do its thing. You let the car rotate, keep your quiet wheel, and just let it come back to you. It can really simplify this car. Now, look what happens if I overdrive the corner. This all goes away. I don't allow the car to load. I don't allow the car to load correctly, so suddenly it doesn't turn. Suddenly it doesn't turn at all. So you gotta let the car load, and that's when it'll start loving the turn. So again, overdrive the corner. Look, I can be on the brake, I can be turning, and just the car will just not be able to load the way that it's meant to, and it won't rotate. But if we don't overdrive the corner, and this will vary track to track, the moment that we don't overdrive the corner and we get it loaded into the corner, it loves to turn. Look at that. I'm full throttle and it just loves to turn. So the car is honestly not the problem. And even with the beginning steps, these beginning steps are a little tight for what I like personally really love in a setup, but these cars can be driven so neutral if you don't overdrive the corner and you keep your hands quiet in the middle of the corner. And this doesn't just go for Charlotte, it goes for any high bank track, whether it be an intermediate, a short track like Bristol, or a big track like Michigan and Auto Club. You just want that quiet hands and you want the not overdriving the corner. Let the car be in its natural state where it wants to be loaded and turned into the corner. On top of all of that, just general smoothness is going to be very important for especially the long run on these Gen 4 cars. It's not as edgy as the old Gen 4 car was in iRacing. You have a lot of rear tire spin on that old car, and everything can change as setups change, but currently how these Gen 4 cars are set up in iRacing, you could be pretty aggressive on the throttle as long as you have your car weight shifted correctly. I actually had a pretty hard time getting wheel spin before getting the car tight. But that's not to say that that's a bad handling car, because once I got the car in the groove and whenever I hit the line correctly, the car handled perfectly. So it's just more of what side the failure tends to lean on more than anything. Naturally, smooth inputs are going to be very high priority for a car with such high horsepower and fairly low downforce relative to other oval cars. While I was finding that smooth wheel inputs was the most important part with these early setups in this car, our resident pro Liam was adamant that the wheel and the pedals were both equally important, with the pedals probably even being more important. I think it depends on the setup too. If you get a setup where the rear tire is going to be even less gripped up, you're probably going to be a lot smoother on the pedals. One aspect of the pedals that people really overlook is corner entry. When you're getting off the throttle, that smoothness is just as important as any other smoothness that you have in the corner, because if you are getting off the throttle instantly, it might upset the balance of the car. Another pretty big update with this new Gen 4 car was the aero. Now, it's not going to be as crazy as the new ARCA car is, but it's not just completely disregarding aero like the old Gen 4 car and ARCA car did. We have pretty realistic aerodynamics in the car, including dirty air and drafting. The drafting in particular is very strong. You'll see it in some of the super speedway clips, but you can really get a run on somebody and it might be overtuned, although I don't know. I've stopped guessing about what's tuned and overtuned and undertuned in terms of aero. In terms of dirty air though, you're gonna find it somewhere between where the old ARCA car was and where the new ARCA car is. So you'll feel the dirty air. It's not as catastrophic and it's a little bit easier to work around, but that opens up a lot of racecraft when you have dirty air like this. That we'll cover real quick again if you haven't watched the ARCA video. As the lead car, your job is to deny clean air to the car behind you, and as the car behind, your job is to search for clean air of the car in front of you. This isn't just as black as white as, oh, my nose is fully on clean air, so I'm going to be good. Really, as long as you have a quarter or a half of a car width under somebody, you're gonna have that feeling of clean air. So your job as the lead car should be to seal off the bottom if that's where the car behind you is going, or blocking as much air as you can if they're choosing to go somewhere else. Whereas when you're running on the bottom, you might want to really focus on getting any sort of clean air to any part of the nose. One of the best things that you can do as a trailing car is to get all the way to the white line while the person in front of you is slightly missing it. That means that you pretty much get a free corner and you'll be able to make up a lot of time. So it's more of like a cat and mouse game, but it's what we see a lot in regular real life NASCAR as well. This car is pretty good for multi-groove racing as well, because the car isn't just made to go on one line. It can just load into the corner, start turning really good, and no matter where you are, you can find a good line out of it. So that leads to a lot of good aero battles, side-by-side racing, and a couple of cool finishes, which you're probably seeing right now. Moving on to short track, specifically the flatter types like New Hampshire, I found that this car feels a lot closer to like the old ARCA car than the old Gen 4 car because of its relative stability on exit under throttle. Now, the big thing about this though is that you have so high power going into the corner that you're going to have to back off a lot earlier than you're used to in a lot of other cars. So overdriving, if you're going off a reference point that you just feel is correct, is probably too late for a car like this Gen 4 car. I found that once I was able to enter the corner and not slide up the track or not overdrive a diamond, if that's what I was going for, I found that center and exit was about as easy as, say, the current Xfinity car maybe, or maybe even the truck to that matter, because I found a lot of good right rear stability once I was able to get my car straight that I wouldn't necessarily expect from, say, the old Gen 4 car. As I mentioned plenty of times in short track guides, the name of the game for these flat tracks is not tire wear, but tire heat. So avoiding tire scrub as much as you can, whether that be with a late apex line, a diamond line, or just rolling a line like the bottom. There are many ways to achieve it, but you just want to avoid just literal tire scrub across the track. No different with this car. Honestly feels a lot more intuitive, or at least what I'm used to on a short track versus those larger intermediate ovals. So there's not as much that I would point out as too different in a combo like Gen 4 at New Hampshire. So overall, I did see kind of a mixed reaction about this new Gen 4 car when it first came out, but I think a lot of it had to do with how people were approaching the car similar to how the old iRacing Gen 4 car drove. And the fact is, it's just a different car. Especially on corner entry, you're not going to be able to turn into the corners the same way, and you might need to do those earlier entries with earlier turn-ins to get the feeling that the car is just completely on a rail and hooked up that I know that it's capable of at the vast majority of places. At least every place I tested. I think that this car feels intuitive once you get into that mindset that you need the car loaded up for the entire corner, and that if you don't get it loaded up, it just won't turn. But let me know what you think about the new Gen 4 car down below in the comments. Alright, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope to see you all on the track.